Good day, happy Tuesday, Wilmington friends of the Facebooks. It's Chris. I'm here at Second Glass. It's Cellar Chats. It's the weekly wine flights. I'm back to doing Tuesdays, at least for this week. You know, I just like to keep you all on your toes. I don't know how many of you actually tune in, like going, hey, he's going to be on at this time, because that's what he used to do. But hopefully not too many of you, because I'm sure I'd, disappoint a lot of you. That being said, it's kind of warm out. It's a little humid. It's proper high summer, as we would call it. So it's time we do, you guessed it, rosé again. Because, we just can't get enough of it. At least that's what the market says. There's plenty of it out there. People need it. People have to have it. It's hot. I want something fresh. I want it to be pink, and I want it to be delicious. And we got 3 of them this week. All right. We are doing what I, so beautifully called. Yes, I come up with all the titles. They are that good all the time because they come from me. That's not true. They're pretty kitschy and pretty cheesy. But you know what? I have fun doing it. So we are going all domestic, a different shade of pink. Starting out with Curran, their Grenache Gris Rosé from Santa Barbara. And then we're going to move up the coast a little bit, up to the Monterey region, to do Birichino's Vin Gris, kind of an all-time favorite of mine. And then lastly, further up the coast, so we're kind of starting kind of central, south central, I suppose, with the Curran, moving up to Monterey, and then finishing in Clarksburg, I was going to say Carneros, with Ryme's Herringer Vineyard Aglianico Rosé. So let's get into it. So we did a rosé flight maybe back in May-ish, around the time that we really started seeing a lot of the new releases of rosé coming out. And whenever the new releases come out, people get excited. We want to showcase them, and that's what we did. But since then, we haven't really featured a lot of rosé. We've had a few. And now that it's high summer, and again, like I said, it is sweltering, it's muggy, it's hot. It is peak rosé drinking season, if you will. So it was time to revisit, and we went all California. So again, starting out Curran, these guys are based in Santa Barbara County. Big focus here on like Rhone style varieties, Grenache, Syrah, things of that nature. I think they do a really lovely Grenache Blanc that I've had in the past, but they do this beautiful Grenache Gris. And if I remember correctly, I don't think it says it on the back. I believe it is a blend of, so it's called Grenache Gris, and then on the back it's called Grenache Rosé. I do think that it's a blend of red Grenache and then Grenache Gris, which is a mutation of Grenache, that are blended together to make this very delicately beautiful salmon-hued pink rosé. On the nose, I recall this the last time I did it, and it's, speaking to that tone, being very aromatic. Lots of like ripe raspberry, kind of like delicate pink and white florals. Beautiful little like citrus zest kind of characteristics. Oh, wow. Palate is excellent. Tons of flavor. Again, coming in with more of that like tart raspberry, maybe a little bit of like a saline ocean influence. Again, we are in Santa Barbara County. If I had to guess, because I don't know specifically, it's probably coming from a couple of different appellations, but a fair amount of coastal influence here. And you typically get that really lovely like marine layer, kind of like salty sea air influence on the wines in Santa Barbara. And this does not lack any of that in the best way possible. Again, what a great way to kick off the flight this week, and a great way to just, escape the overwhelming heat that we are experiencing here, and I think everywhere across the globe is experiencing, at least on the northern hemisphere. It is hot kind of all over. But that is just the way of the world, isn't it? Yeah, almost like a kind of like white peach meets a little bit of raspberry watermelon juice and maybe like a little underripe pineapple. Really, really tasty stuff. Again, that is Curran Grenache Gris, their 2022 rosé from Santa Barbara County. All right, as I said, we're gonna pretend that this is like the California coast. That's kind of what it looks like. We were down here in like Santa Barbara. We're gonna move on up to like where this little elbow is. Elbow, yeah, maybe an elbow. We'll call it elbow, crease, maybe a cranny. And that's where we're gonna find Monterey. And that's where Birichino is located, and that's where most of the fruit for this. It's just listed as California because they do source from several different areas, but a mass majority comes from Monterey. And it's kind of hard to see with the glare, but this is such a gorgeous, gorgeous label. This is actually a piece of artwork that the guys at Birichino own. It's hanging in their tasting room, and they are just top-notch human beings. So if you ever get a chance to go visit, I highly suggest it. But while you can't go visit them, with a 20-minute drive from your house, you can come here and taste their wine. So again, this is their Vin Gris. What I didn't explain before, which was Gris in French, and it's often used throughout like French wines. Gris refers to gray, which just means kind of like off color. You find it Pinot Gris. Grenache Gris, Vin Gris is an old term referred to like wines that were not red, but they also weren't white, so they were kind of gray wines. Not very accurate considering the fact that all of the wines I've ever had labeled Gris, at least that weren't like Pinot Gris or Grenache Gris, were pinkish in color. Again, here, very delicate color, just a little more kind of like orangish pink hue than the Curran, where the Curran I think really sits in that like gorgeous like salmon, almost onion skin color, which is really typical and classic rosé color that people look for. This has got just a little bit more like pink hue to it. Primarily Grenache with some Carignan, Cinsault, a little bit of Roll, which is the French term for Vermentino. And coming off of this wine where the Curran, like I said, was very like aromatic, but with like peaches and like white raspberries and things of that nature. The Birichino is really aromatic on the floral side, and there's almost like, to me, every time I have this wine, it just, if I were to look at the wine label and try and imagine what that smells like, that like what this scene would smell like, that's what I get in this glass. It's pretty much what the label, in my perception, would smell like if I was standing in that, in whatever that painting was a painting of. Again, a little bit of like, kind of like tart raspberry characteristics, definitely high-tone florals, lots of citrus, lots of that like pristine minerality-like characteristic. Oh, wow. So pretty. And then on the palate, it pretty much does the same thing it does on the nose, which it gives this really beautiful florality. And I know I've said this before, but there's this texture to me that tastes of flowers. Now, I don't go around eating flowers all the time, although people do tend to put edible flowers on essentially everything anymore, which could be a little overdoing it. I get it. It's pretty. It's beautiful. But sometimes I just want food. I don't need flowers. But I digress. This always has to me, when I think about flowers, particularly like rose petals, I think of like that little like powdery substance that like you feel, which is probably like pollen and things like that on the flowers. And this wine texturally always has that. And I always find it to be such a pretty, piece of complexity that makes this wine stand out amongst others. Again, on the palate has that like powdery kind of flowery characteristic that I really, really love, with some like white raspberry, red raspberry. Again, both the first two wines so refreshing, so perfect for hot, sunny, muggy weather that we're having here. Again, the second wine in the lineup this week for the weekly wine flights is the Birichino Vin Gris. And then we're rounding it out. Let's move into Ryme Cellars. Lovely, lovely humans. We've featured their wines at least a few times on here. I don't think anybody would be surprised to hear that I really like these wines. Partly because, well, they're primarily Italian grape varieties done in California, and partly because the wines are just really, really good, and I really like what they're doing. So this is their Aglianico Rosé from Clarksburg, and specifically from the Herringer Vineyard. Now, we had sort of onion skin, very light, very delicate salmon color. We moved into a little bit more pinkish hue with a little like orange tinge to it. And then as we get to the Aglianico, I mean, it is almost like pure, like goldenrod orange with just a touch of pink. So I wasn't kidding about the different shade of pink. These are all slightly different. Now, based on that color, you would think that maybe I wouldn't put this wine last, but if my memory serves me correctly, this one actually has more texture and more roundness than the other two wines, although it's very delicate on the nose. You get, again, more red berries, a little bit of a strawberry characteristic. Aglianico is a fairly thick-skinned grape. Apparently I can't talk either. It's fairly thick-skinned, so when you use it to make red wines, it makes really robust, very structured, very tannic, really gorgeous wines that do, as a red wine, have a really pretty like floral characteristic, especially as they age. Aglianico, I think, is one of the most underrated great grapes and great wines of the world, but that's just me. But when done as a rosé, you get a little bit of this like kind of orange zest, kind of orange peel characteristic on the nose and on the palate, but this really rounded textural complexity that makes it so much fun to drink and share and enjoy and have with food and friends. All right, let's throw some back on the palate. Yeah, again, so much more breadth to the palate. Whereas these first two, loads of flavor, but really fresh, really clean, and kind of finish really quickly. And I don't mean that in a bad way. The flavors are all about crisp and fresh, and sort of like they get on your palate, they make you feel good, they make you want to drink more, and then they sort of move on so you can drink more. This really like lingers with like a lot of characteristics that just kind of like spread across your palate and become more complex as they sit there. Again, I get definitely red fruits, but I get that kind of orange peel, almost like burnt citrus characteristic. A lot of like fresh minerality, really like saline saltiness here. And just honestly a perfect way to round out this really fun flight. I mean, on their own, all of these wines do exactly what you want from rosé. They're crisp, they're fresh, they're inviting, they make you want to drink more, they make you feel really amazing. You're sitting outside, it's sunny, you're with your friends, you're having a really beautiful small plates, or you may be having a whole meal here at Second Glass, and you're enjoying these wines, and they're lubricant to create a more enjoyable scenario. But when tasted all in a row, it really kind of like case in point, like showcases how different and how interesting rosé can be, even when perceptively, when you look at them on the shelf, you go, oh, well, these are all kind of like dry and pink. Like, you know, how different can they be? But they really are quite different. All right, moving on. Let's wrap up real quick the lineup this week. Again, it is Tuesday. Second Glass is not open today. They are open tomorrow. So please come in this week. Enjoy some amazing rosé. The flight will include the Curran Grenache Gris 2022, followed by the Birichino Vin Gris from Monterey 2022 as well. These are all 2022. I'll just stop saying that. And then Ryme Cellars, their Herringer Vineyard Aglianico Rosé. Thank you all for tuning in. Thanks for supporting small business. Be safe, be smart, stay cool. See y'all next week.